So today we're going to be taking a look at some of the tools that I've acquired over the years of building and repairing PCs. So I'm going to lay everything out here and show you guys. The first thing that's been really handy to me is actually building and having a workbench, just an area that I can lay everything out and just have space to work. I do have some boxes down there, but I can move those. It has a second tier down there I can put stuff, and this right here is a Lazy Susan. It's just nice to be able to set a computer up on this and not have to constantly pick it up and turn it around. So it's nice to just be able to set the PC right here and spin it around. First things first, the tool bag. I believe I bought this at Lowe's, the AWP brand, but you can probably just get any tool bag that would do the job and work just fine. Just make sure it has plenty of pockets and, you know, zippings up and stuff like that. So let's get everything laid out here on the workbench. So getting things started with the cables that I keep in my tool bag, I have two different kinds of DVI cables. I have like 3 different HDMI cables, since that's usually pretty common. This right here is a DisplayPort cable. I have a power cord here, never know when you might need that. Also, my other power cord is up in my house. And then this is the other HDMI cable that I have, and also I have a VGA connected right here. This isn't super common, but definitely good to have a VGA. I keep the cables on the outside of my bag just so I have easy access to them. I can spin that around, have the HDMI cables right there, and the DVIs right there. And I normally carry that VGA cable in my bag, but right now I've just had it hooked up to my monitor here in my shop. Okay, so there's a lot here on the table, but let's go over it little by little. Starting back over here in the top left corner, these, of course, you gotta have some zip ties, and these are like zip tie mounts for cable management. You peel off a sticky back, and they're actually really good. You can get those at Lowe's. These came from Walmart, but you can get zip ties from just about anywhere. You can get the clear or the black. Those are 4-inch. Gotta have some cable tie cutters. I mean, these are pretty easy to find, but these came from Harbor Freight. They've worked really well, and they're really thin, so you can really cut the zip ties. And this is actually like a little peanut plastic container that I put zip ties in, and it actually worked out really well. You can pop the top off there, grab the zip ties. And actually over here on my toolbox, this is a big 1,000 count zip ties that you can find on Amazon. In my opinion, they work just fine, but they're just a little thin, but still very good. I would definitely recommend those. 1,000 pack for $10. Not a bad deal at all. Of course, you gotta have some magnetic parts trays. This really helps so you don't knock screws off and have to look around for them. So magnetic parts trays, once again, Harbor Freight. Not trying to promote them or anything, but a lot of this can be had at Harbor Freight. You don't have to get the best of the best tools to work on computers, but definitely have 2 magnetic parts trays. This right here is just organized screws and things from over the years of case accessories and screws that have came with cases. And then this set right here can actually be bought on Amazon if you don't have, you know, a collection like I do. And actually over here I have more that I need to organize from the past few computers that I've built, screws and zip ties and things like that. But moving on here, these are actually, I'm actually going to have to open these up and lay these out to show you guys. So what these are, you actually get 2 in the bag for $5. It's really neat. These are like front panel connectors. You get, you know, your power switch, your reset switch, and then on the other end you actually get physical buttons you can press. These are really good for diagnostic purposes. And you get the 2 LEDs right there. These are really handy for like if you're setting your motherboard up just to bench test it before you put it in your case. You can hook these up without your case and see if it's going to power it on. And I've used these a few times. Definitely really good for $5, 2 in the pack. And also, this is something I purchased a while back. You don't necessarily need this, but this is a chassis intrusion like button. It's common on a lot of Dells and HPs, so when you open up the side panel, that button pokes out and lets you know that the computer's been tampered with. Never could get that computer going. It fussed and fussed at me about this. So I've just kept that in the bag with that. Over here, I'm not going to open this up, but this used to be, and these went together, liquid metal. This was a delid kit for back when I had Intel Skylake, and I delidded a few other CPUs. Honestly, I could probably take this out of my bag because delidding isn't really a thing anymore. Most CPUs nowadays are soldered. Also keep a spare Ethernet cable. I'm not sure what this is, I think maybe it's Cat 5e, which is plenty enough for just quickly making a connection. This here is some sort of SATA adapter I've just held on to, and this came with an EVGA GTX 960 I bought years ago. This is like a DVI to VGA little adapter. And of course, something I recommend that most people kind of overlook is a little flashlight. You don't have to have anything super bright. This is just one AAA battery. I think maybe it's 30 or 40 lumens. Plenty enough, can run for hours. And this is a headlamp. It takes 3 AAA batteries, a few different settings for if you need both your hands. And of course, Harbor Freight. I mean, you can't really go wrong. As long as you know what you're buying, their products are pretty decent. Now, this is the really interesting section, which is my tools. Right here, this is a Phillips #1 screwdriver, and I'll talk to you guys here in a minute about what these are because I also have one on this screwdriver. This is a really long Phillips #2, which I have needed when I'm going to have to fight with these, apparently. A really long Phillips #2, because when you put screws in near the back of the case, like near the I/O, it's good to just have a really long screwdriver. And again, there's my Phillips #1. That's used for like M.2 screws. I have a little Husky kit here that I got years ago. It's got some smaller bits and things like that. I haven't really had to use that, but just a nice kit. It's got some Torx in there, some really small flat heads. I've always just held on to this, but haven't really used it in building PCs. Right here, haven't had to use this either, but I've held on to it. This came with my Vertigear chair that I bought years ago, and this came with a CryoRig cooler. This right here is a somewhat recent purchase. It's a ratcheting screwdriver, and what prompted me to buy this is the release of the Linus Tech Tip screwdriver, which is very popular, has really good reviews. It's a very good screwdriver, the Linus Tech Tips one is, but I just wasn't looking to spend that sort of money. So with all the reviews and comparisons, I chose the Williams WRS1 ratcheting screwdriver. This has a fantastic ratchet. I mean, you can barely touch it and it will move. You don't want a lot of force fighting against you when you're trying to tighten your screws, and of course it's really easy to switch between tighten and loosen, and you can also sort of lock it in the middle. Just use it as a standard screwdriver. Has a very good magnet, the best I've seen on a screwdriver. And I'm going to try to take this cap off here. This is where the bits are stored, but actually a YouTuber, and I'm very surprised, this YouTuber was kind enough, I covered the shipping, and he 3D printed this bit holder, because normally the bits come loose in the handle, but he 3D printed this bit holder, and it can hold 6 bits. And of course I've got the Phillips #2 in here somewhere. I've got a Phillips #3, 2 different flatheads, and a Phillips #1. So this one screwdriver can pretty much take the place of these two right here, but sometimes I really need this longer one. And every now and then I just want to use, just reach and grab for the Phillips #1 screwdriver for the, it's going to fall off there, for the M.2, but this also has a Phillips #1. But just know, a lot of the reviews say that they don't like how the bits rattle around in the handle, which is no big deal really. Very good screwdriver. This one's like $35. It's on Amazon, eBay. Highly, highly, highly suggest this one. This has been a fantastic screwdriver. It's annoying to have a screwdriver you really like and your screws just kind of fall off of it. And before I wrap up this video, I'll put the bit in there and show you guys how well this holds screwdrivers. Getting a little messy here on my workbench. This is an Allen key. Not sure where that came from or why I held on to that. Those right there are two, like, I guess you'd call them like finger screwdrivers. I've maybe used those once. Not really have needed to, or came across a situation that I've had to use those very often. And something that I didn't really think I would need, but is actually came in handy, is all sorts of different tweezers. Now, the silver ones you see here, I think maybe it's a 5 or 6 piece you can get at, well, you guessed it, Harbor Freight. This one I'm not sure where my mom bought those for me at, but you can get a decent tweezer set at Harbor Freight. And as I said earlier in this video, you don't really need the best of the best to work on computers. And of course, can't lie, I haven't used this much at all, if any. Maybe once. Anti-static wrist strap. But if you're working in the IT field, they definitely want you to have and use one of these to take all the precautions. And I saved the best for last. I'm sure some of you have wondered, what thermal paste do you use? And we can fuss and fight and argue about the best thermal paste, but the MX4 is a good price to performance. You can find some thermal pastes that are a few degrees cooler, but I mean, what is a few degrees on your CPU going to do, or even your GPU? And honestly, between the best and the worst thermal paste, there's only like 5 degrees. But this is a 20-gram tube of thermal paste, the MX4, and I like that it has those indicators right there to sort of let you know how much is in there. And this one is an 8-gram. I think the 8-gram is maybe $5 or $6, and it has those indicators right there too. Good thermal paste. Can't go wrong for the price. It's not worth spending double for 1 or 2 more degrees. So that's the thermal paste that I use. Now, as far as removing thermal paste, I just use alcohol prep pads. There's all sorts of ways online, but I found this just really easy to just buy a small box. It's like $1 for, I think, 100 alcohol prep pads. Just make sure when you clean your CPU, you just give it a little bit of time to dry, or you can dry it off with a coffee filter. And as far as applying thermal paste, I saw Kerry Holzman use this technique, and I have been using it for quite some time now. It's putting on a nitrile glove, and after you do, your little dot of thermal paste on the CPU, you just use your index finger with the glove on to spread the thermal paste around. It has worked really well since I've adopted this method, and it makes sure that the thermal paste is spread out and you don't have to rely on the cooler mounting pressure to spread out the paste. I have done this on many PCs, and it's not killed any CPUs or any parts or anything like that before anyone tries to say that it's dangerous and can kill parts. I've done this on at least my last 6 PC builds, maybe. No, I take that back. Probably around 8. My last 8 PC builds and other computers that I've worked on, like Dell and HP and Lenovo's, I've used this method. So it works just fine. Just make sure you get the nitrile gloves, and I guess you could get thicker than 5 mil. But yeah. Also, it helps to have just a spare power supply on hand. This is more or less a diagnostic tool. This is a 750 watt unit. You don't have to spend a whole lot or get anything super fancy. It doesn't even have to be semi-modular or even full-on modular. This one just has all the cables right there. But this is good to just, if I suspect a power supply has failed, just to quickly hook this up. I don't even think it has an 80+ rating, which is okay. Most people hear that and they freak out. But this is just to hook into someone's computer, turn it on really quick, see if it turns on. And if it does, then like I said, this is just used as a diagnostic tool. So I told you guys I would show you how well that this Phillips screwdriver holds screws onto the end. I've taken a motherboard screw out of this kit. And not only is the Phillips number 2 bit very, very good, and so that's probably half of why it holds screws on here very well, but it also has a good magnet. I'm gonna hold this up here and show you guys, like, oh, I actually hit the table with it, but you can like shake this around The screw will not come off. Like, you can even, you know, shake that around. And so normally when you're working on a PC, you won't just be shaking your screwdriver around. So under normal circumstances, this isn't going to drop your screws, which is one of the main reasons why I really love this screwdriver, aside from having a very good ratchet and just being able to switch very easily. And it just has a good hard plastic handle. It's like a 3-sided screwdriver. And these right here are screwdriver magnetizers made by Ulsa Tools. They're a little pricey. It's like $12 or $13 for 2 of them. You're supposed to be able to just slide it onto the screwdriver and slide it back off, but I threw away the box. I didn't read the instructions. So I just keep these on the screwdrivers, and this one's not magnetic at all, and it helps hold the screw on there for the M.2 SSDs. This screwdriver was slightly magnetic, but this one's just helped it even more. So these are really neat. Recently found out about those. And of course it does help to have an air compressor so I can blow the dust out of PCs. If you're not able to purchase or even use an air compressor, maybe you live in an apartment, you could definitely still use the compressed air. But over the long haul, the amount of PCs I've worked on, this air compressor has definitely been worth its investment. Just make sure if you do it, you get a decent air gun. I've used a few that have just kind of fell apart, but this one's been really good. And of course, overall, it just kind of helps to have your own space to work on stuff. You know, there's the workbench. And of course, I've showed this many times in videos, but the power strip, not having to bend over, just plug the power strip in right there. And just being able to plug stuff in right there, flip on the switch. Of course, that's where my monitor's connected, which also helps to just have a spare monitor down here hooked up, ready to go. I've already got HDMI, you know, plugged up, and I really need to do that VGA. But that's pretty much going to wrap it up. If you guys have any questions, let me know down in the comments. I'll try my best to leave all the links in the description. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.